Abraham Louis Breguet is perhaps the greatest watchmaker to ever live. But what does Breguet have to offer 200 years later? Today we answer that and a lot more by looking at some of their finest timepieces, their hand craftsmanship, and getting a personal tour from their CEO. Let's head inside Breguet. So I'm here with Lionel and Marca from Breguet. Thank you for having us. And for the context here to start, this is a brand and name that is perhaps not rivaled by anyone else from a historical standpoint. So could you give some context to the history of this brand, Abraham Louis Breguet, and the technical pursuits that he was able to achieve?
Alors, Abraham Louis Breguet est un horloger suisse qui est né à Neuchâtel, qui est parti à Paris pour apprendre son métier d'horloger rabilleur. De ce fait, il a créé sa société où il a fait des développements horlogers de manière conséquente et avec pas mal de nouveautés. Donc pour moi, il a révolutionné l'art horloger parce qu'il a amené différentes techniques. Il a pris une technique qui n'était pas dans l'horlogerie, qui était le guillochage, qu'il a amené sur les cadrans afin d'amener une certaine vie sur le cadran, qui à l'époque était beaucoup des cadrans en émail. De ce fait, en faisant du guillochage sur les cadrans, ça lui a permis aussi d'avoir une luminosité différente du cadran et aussi une meilleure lecture parce que le guillochage élimine les reflets. Ensuite, on arrive aussi au design parce qu'il a également révolutionné, on va dire, l'horlogerie de cette époque, c'était les aiguilles Breguet. À l'époque, c'était des aiguilles type Louis. Donc lui, il est arrivé avec la sobriété d'une aiguille on ne peut plus simple, donc c'était également du design.
So could you explain, because we have a full day plan going through the workshops, how this building is structured and how the watchmaking is done here at Breguet?
Suite au rachat par le Swatch Group en 1999 de Breguet, par M. Hayek Senior, il a été à ce moment-là décidé d'avoir un site de production qui est l'Orient. Donc ici nous avons toute l'activité qui est la fabrication des mouvements, donc l'usinage. Ensuite, nous avons toute la partie qui est la terminaison de ces mouvements, au niveau décoration, au niveau gravure, au niveau guillochage sur le mouvement s'il y en a, l'assemblage de ceux-ci par des horlogers compétents et formés. Nous avons également toute la partie assemblage de la montre, ça veut dire le T2, on appelle ça T2, c'est du terminaison 2, terminaison 1, c'est l'assemblage du mouvement. Donc toute cette activité ici est conséquente, nous sommes à peu près 800 personnes sur site.
So Lionel, can you explain where we're at right now? We have these different machines and specifically this department and why it's important to the brand Breguet.
Le guillochage n'est pas une création par Abraham Louis Breguet. Le guillochage était une technique qui existait à l'époque pour les armes à feu, les choses comme ça. C'était même dans d'autres utilisations artistiques de l'époque. De là, quand M. Hayek Senior a racheté Breguet, il s'est posé une grande question, c'est que le guillochage était une technique qui avait passablement disparu. Il n'y avait pas de formation, il n'y avait plus tellement de machines. Donc il est parti dans une recherche fondamentale de retrouver tout l'historique de ce guillochage. Donc ils sont partis à la recherche de guillocheuses d'époque. Et de là, quand vous les retrouvez de l'époque, il fallait les restaurer, il fallait les remettre en état. D'où le fait qu'il a créé un atelier de remise en état des guillocheuses. Entre-temps, il en achetait d'autres, il y en a eu beaucoup d'achetés. Et ici, nous faisons la restauration de ces machines pour en garantir un futur. Et finalement, ce qu'on constate, c'est qu'en relançant toute cette activité en 2001, 2002, 2003, il s'est passé que ça a un peu réveillé toute l'industrie de la région parce qu'il y a beaucoup d'entreprises qui ont tout d'un coup retrouvé des guillocheuses, qui se sont mis à faire du guillochage. Donc, on va dire qu'il y a tout un pan industriel qui s'est redécouvert.
So very quickly, could you also just describe, because this is an art that is of a previous era that you've revived, could you talk about how this actually works, talking about making these micro cuts, the different motifs you can do, and how this process would work with an artisan?
Ouais, okay. Vous l'avez là. Mm-hmm. Ceci, ce sont les cames. Donc nous devons les fabriquer afin de pouvoir faire ce motif qui sera répété sur le cadran. Donc ça, c'est tous des cames qui vont être manipulés à la main, où vous tournez à la main, vous faites cette activité-là. Vous avez le burin qui est là, qui va se prendre la position, et quand vous allez tourner, cet appareil ici va simuler l'enlèvement de copeaux pour faire le dessin. Alors ici, vous avez exactement ce que je vous expliquais tout à l'heure, c'est le fait que le guillocheur va faire tourner sa manivelle à la main à une certaine vitesse, le plus régulier possible, et vous avez les dessins qui vont être reproduits sur le cadran qui sont issus des cames qui sont là. Maintenant, le temps consacré pour faire un cadran, eh bien, ça dépend toujours de la complexité du dessin. Si le dessin est assez simple, on va dire que ça peut prendre plus ou moins 1 heure. Et vous avez des cadrans très complexes qui peuvent aller jusqu'à 8 à 10 heures de travail.
So we're now in our next department, another handcraft, enameling. So can you walk us through what happens in this department specifically?
Ok, l'émail est une matière très complexe, très difficile à maîtriser. Donc pour commencer avec l'émail, on commence par la poudre d'émaux, qui peut être blanche ou de couleur. Donc c'est un travail de patience, de dextérité, de doigté, et vous venez disposer la poudre d'émaux qui a été mélangée avec de l'eau distillée. Donc là, la personne doit poser la poudre, enfin le liquide émaillé, d'une manière assez, on va dire, très cohérente sur toute sa surface pour éviter des surélévations, des surépaisseurs et des choses comme ça. Donc c'est un travail extrêmement précis. Où encore une fois, on doit disposer ce liquide émaillé dans les emplacements qui ont été usinés et dédiés pour mettre telle ou telle couleur ou telle partie d'émail. La pose d'émail avec un motif, voilà, la peinture sur émail. Alors ici, vous avez la mise au feu, on va dire, au four, qui monte à plus de 800 degrés afin de figer l'émail avec ses dessins, avec tout ce qui a été fait avant. Ça part dans le four à plus de 800 degrés. Et c'est là que tout se termine. Soit vous avez le cadran qui sort et qui est parfait état, validé, ou vous avez eu des problèmes de fissures, de petits trous, de petites choses comme ça, qui fait qu'on doit recommencer le travail. Le cadran, il n'est pas niveau qualité, il est refusé.
So earlier we saw the restoration of the machines. Now we see it actually at work here. And this is the most rose engines I've ever seen in one place, in one room. So could you describe what happens in this room specifically when it's being worked on?
Alors ici, nous sommes dans l'atelier de guillochage où nous faisons en gros, on va dire, la production des cadrans guillochés qui comprennent les deux bases, on va dire, historiques de Breguet qui sont le clou de Paris et le grain d'orge. Alors, si on veut voir le clou de Paris, et c'est deux décorations, on va dire, qui sont typiquement Breguet. Le clou de Paris, c'est Breguet. C'est pas lui qui l'a inventé, mais c'est ce qui est la quintessence de Breguet. Et le grain d'orge, c'est quand on fait la partie courbée. Quand on regarde un cadran Breguet, on ne se rend pas compte de la complexité du cadran, ni de la difficulté d'obtenir un cadran guilloché qui passe par les mains expertes de cette dame, de toutes ces personnes ici.
That was following off on that point. Talk about if it's just a single pattern. I know it depends on the time, but just to build on that, like how long one artisan is going to be working on a dial.
Ça peut être 1 heure, et un cadran plus complexe, ça peut aller jusqu'à 8 heures. Alors tout à l'heure, nous avons vu le clou de Paris qui était une décoration en ligne droite. Vous aviez l'outil et le cadran qui bougeait. Ici, vous avez le grain d'orge qui, l'outil est fixe et c'est le cadran qui tourne. Donc l'idée même de tout ça, c'est qu'on peut mélanger l'un et l'autre. On peut faire une partie du cadran en clou de Paris droit et on peut faire des extérieurs en arrondi en jouant sur la rotation du cadran. Et j'espère que vous avez quand même vu que les personnes qui font ce travail doivent avoir une main qui fait la rotation et vous avez ici une main qui fait la pression pour enlever le copeau. Il n'y a pas de machine, hein, c'est pas numérique.
what is the training required to be able to do this work?
La formation, donc on va dire que senior, on revient à senior, Hayek senior. Quand il a racheté, le métier de guillocheur n'existait plus, donc il y avait très peu de guillocheurs à travers le monde, mais même la Suisse, uniquement la Suisse. Donc en faisant déjà la restauration des guillocheuses, derrière il a fallu former les gens pour cette activité. Donc ici nous avons des personnes qui sont formées par l'équipe ici, qui sont formées à faire du guillochage. Oui, c'est une formation qui n'a pas de reconnaissance par un papier, par un CFC, par des choses comme ça. C'est les manufactures qui forment les gens et je pense que là, moi j'ai eu des idées pour faire une reconnaissance pour ces personnes qui ont subi cette formation avec les années, parce qu'on apprend aussi avec les années. C'est un métier qu'on apprend avec les années, c'est comme l'émaillage, c'est comme la gravure.
So from rose engines, now to engraving, so finer components. So could you walk us through what happens in this department specifically?
La gravure, c'est un métier qui a toujours été très lié à l'horlogerie, parce que l'idée même de pouvoir mettre des motifs sur des places, des emplacements qui le permettent, ça a toujours été une volonté de l'horlogerie, mais comme ça se retrouve dans plein d'activités artistiques où on fabriquait des pièces et on voulait les décorer. Donc ici, nous avons la gravure main, où l'objectif est de mettre une décoration avec des motifs, des fois, des motifs réalistes, pour sublimer la pièce, que ce soit le mouvement ou que ce soit potentiellement le cadran. Donc là, nous avons monsieur qui travaille avec ces différents outils, ça s'appelle des échoppes, voilà, et puis il vient enlever de la matière pour créer un motif qui soit réaliste ou non.
So we go from engraving to other finished components and different finishing techniques to some of these bridges. We can now look at Anglage and how this is done. Could you walk us through this as well?
Ok. Nous arrivons à une étape qui est l'anglage lime. Donc sur un pont terminé, déjà gravé. Vous avez deux étapes. La première étape est avant la gravure. On fait un premier anglage. Ensuite, vous avez le pont qui est gravé, décoré. Et vous avez l'étape de finition, on va dire, où là, la personne reprend l'anglage afin de le polir, d'éliminer les petites bavures qu'il pourrait y avoir, mais c'est surtout de polir pour sublimer la pièce avec la gravure sur le pont et de sublimer l'angle. Encore une fois, vous l'avez vu au guillochage, vous l'avez vu à l'émail, vous l'avez vu maintenant à la gravure et vous le voyez encore ici à l'anglage, c'est que toutes ces étapes sont faites à la main. Bien entendu, vous avez chaque personne qui a ses outils qui, selon son doigté, son feeling, ses sensations, développe ses propres outils pour faire l'anglage. Le plus de ça, ensuite, il passe par différentes étapes. C'est comme tout, on commence par du rugueux, moins rugueux, encore moins rugueux, pour finir avec de la diamantine. Donc c'est de la poudre de diamant, et pour arriver à faire un angle poli noir. Donc c'est toute une étape de rugosité, toujours plus fine.
So this brand is so much about preserving the past and the history. So we're here in the restoration department of fine timepieces. Can you describe what happens here specifically?
Ici, nous sommes dans l'atelier de restauration où, quand nous achetons des pièces aux enchères, des pièces historiques de Breguet, eh bien, des fois, elles sont dans un état moyen ou mal entretenu ou mal restauré, ça peut arriver, parce que des fois, il y a des restaurateurs qui n'ont pas fait un excellent travail par le passé. Donc ici, nous restaurons toutes ces pièces qui sont des pièces achetées aux enchères. Donc ici, c'est un peu la crème de la crème des horlogers. Mais ce que je veux dire, c'est qu'ils doivent faire office d'une patience et d'une réflexion et d'une analyse conséquente pour restaurer des pièces qui ont des fois une valeur conséquente. Et là, on fait le début de la restauration, ça veut dire que l'horloger est en train de démonter la pièce et toute l'activité qui va avec, répertorier les composants et ensuite commencer le travail de restauration. Et ça, c'était la montre du prince d'Espagne. Alors, quand nous recevons une pièce à restaurer pour un client final, on procède par un pré-diagnostic, un diagnostic même un peu plus poussé pour savoir combien va coûter la restauration. Donc tout ça, ça se fait ici, on remplit des documents, on envoie, on informe le client donne son accord et ensuite on démarre le travail.
So to close here, I would love to be able to look at some of these restored pieces. Could you walk us through a couple of these as well?
Teddy, est-ce que vous savez ce que c'est qu'une pendule sympathique? Alors la pendule sympathique a été créée par Abraham-Louis Breguet, où c'est un complément de 2 pièces. C'est une pendule et une montre. Et à l'époque, c'est le créateur de la montre connectée. La montre de poche venait se connecter sur la pendule et la pendule mettait la montre de poche à l'heure. La pendule ne bouge pas, ça c'est la montre. Et vous avez donc le régulateur, le système de mise à l'heure, donc l'heure, la minute, d'accord. Vous avez ici les réserves de marche. Et ici, le plus 50e, donc c'est une vraie pendule. Ça fonctionne et c'est stable. Donc la régularité de fonctionnement du système est acquis. Et après, vous venez connecter votre montre, et ce système-là qui est stable corrige cette pièce.
We have something very special in here.
C'est suite au rachat encore de l'entreprise Breguet par Hayek Senior. Monsieur Hayek Senior, il a relancé la fabrication d'une pièce emblématique qui était commandée par Madame Marie-Antoinette, reine de France. Il l'a refabriquée sur des bases de plans, on va dire d'écrits des horlogers de l'époque, sur des photos, sur des bases plus ou moins utilisables pour recréer cette pièce qui avait été commandée par Marie-Antoinette. Ce qu'il ne faut pas oublier, c'est qu'elle a été commandée par Marie-Antoinette, fabriquée par Abraham-Louis Breguet, mais en quelque sorte, elle ne l'a jamais reçue. Parce qu'à ce moment-là, la numéro 1, celle qui a été faite par l'entreprise Breguet de l'époque, elle avait été volée. Voilà. Donc ce qu'il faut dire aussi, c'est que ce bois qui compose l'écrin a été fait dans le chêne qui était au petit Trianon, qui était le chêne de Marie-Antoinette.
Total complications on this watch?
Qu'il faut prendre en compte, c'est le fait d'avoir été pendant une centaine d'années la pièce la plus compliquée du monde.
So we've had a very complete day so far, but now we're going to transition away from seeing how the timepieces are made to actually going through some of the select timepieces from Breguet. I'm joined by Claudio, head of product here at Breguet. Thank you for doing this sit down with me.
Thank you for inviting me.
It's great to have you. So we're going to go through some of the pillars of Breguet here. And to start, let's go with one collection in front of us. This is the Marine collection. A nice synergy between sportiness and elegance. And we have a couple models in front of us. Let's start though with one that's very important to the brand, the Hora Mundi.
Yes.
And
correct.
the special thing about this watch, there's a lot of special things about it, but what's very unique about it is how it's able to display this GMT style functionality with this world time function, this memory function, which no other brand can claim to have anything near like this. So could we start here and talk about this piece, how it works, and why it's so special?
So this watch, of course, his setting is based on the what travels represents for the Marine collections, because this is key in the products. So by expressing the travels, we put a world map on it. And one of the key functions expressing travels, it's also dual time. And with this timepiece, we have a memory dual time systems that actually allows the wearer to switch from one time to another just by pressing one single button. So globally, when you set up a first city, here we have Sydney as an example. By pressing this button, we can jump to London. And by doing this, the system computes actually all the results of the dates, the 24 hours, as well as the city time difference.
So yeah, just to reiterate that, the AM, PM, as well as the date, because
Yes.
the time zone difference can affect both of
Exactly.
these things. It will also
Yes.
be smart enough to know, based on the time zone, whether it's day, night, also if it's going back in time, forward in time in terms of the
Exactly.
date. So this is all working together with synergy.
It is true. So it is synchronized. So here we have an example. I set London at, it is 5:10. and we see that it's 5:10 at night because the sun is going down. When I switch, I go to Sydney. Sydney, we jump to the 26th. It's the next day, and we are 3:10 in the morning. So it means that we are during the night. So we don't see the sun, we see the moon. So we have these day and night indications synchronized with the rest of the functions.
And talk a little bit more also about just the structure of the dial, because I know it also is very special in itself.
So it is true, the dial is made in 3 different parts. So we have a lower part, which is a gold plate. This gold plate is engine turned with the wave pattern, which is typical of the marine decoration of the dial. Then it is coated in blue. So this base is in gold. And then we have a sapphire. On these sapphires, we have a metallization of the globe. We have, of course, the indexes, they are our markers. And these components of sapphire is set up into an external flange, and the combination of the two components are then applied above the gold dial. So it gives a little bit of depth. So it gives also a way to see the moon and the sun driving underneath the globe, and it gives this impression to be lower in the sea part, I would say, than the globe itself. Then, of course, we have also the meridians that are representation of the sphere of our globe.
It's beautiful. Moving along, within the marine collection, now we have equation of time.
Equation of time, yes.
Let's just take a quick step back for those that might not be familiar with the concept of the equation of time. Some might be complicated, but could you break that down for us and just explain it in essence? There's different ways to display this. Now we have a kind of a trailing minute hand here to kind of showcase this. So could you demonstrate how this is actually calculated and why it's actually significant too for the history of the brand as well?
It is true, because actually the equation of time is the difference between the solar time, the real time, and the civil time. Because for simplification, we have decided to have a day during the duration of the day is 24 hours. But in reality, it is 24 hours for the solar time, only 4 days a year. The rest of the year, we have minus 15 plus 15, more or less, time difference between the solar day and the civil day. And the equation of time actually is this exact difference, and in our watch, it is indicated by a single hand that is running with the minute hands with these variations. So here we have, for example, we are the 25th of January. The civil time is about 12 minutes ahead of the solar time. And this watch is a running equation of time, meaning that when you read hour and minutes, you can immediately read the solar time directly on these additional hand.
And why was this an important and significant thing in the past? I mean, for like marine chronometers, could you talk a little bit about this and why this was important?
Marine chronometers were made to guarantee your travel, and you had 2 ways to measure your location on Earth. Measuring the longitude was more complicated because you couldn't measure that without a very precise and accurate timekeeping. And so on the boats, they were having a marine chronometer that were set up at Greenwich time, and every day they were comparing the Greenwich time with the time they were measuring the sun at the apex. And with that, they could measure the longitude reference. And then by crossing it with the latitude reference, they know exactly where they are on the seas, because you don't want to go north if you have to go south. So that's the meaning of the marine chronometer. And the marine collection is, of course, inspired by these elements of navigations.
You also have a tourbillon, calendar functions, and this equation of time is going to know, you're going to know the equation of time regardless of the time. It's going to be able to tell that. So it's that smart of the watch mechanism.
The point I have to add, it is true that equation of time is related to the day and date where we are located. And of course, you need the perpetual calendar for that, because the perpetual calendar is able to provide you with the right dates for long and short months, and considering the leap years as well. So you have to know the exact dates and then measure the equation of time for these exact dates.
And one final point I'll just note out is on the tourbillon cage, above the tourbillon cage, is a small little nod also to the equation of time. Could you just distinguish what this is?
So you see the the mounts, actually, and the mounts are there to set up the equation of time wheel at the right date.
So that's what we're
So
seeing
that's
on
why
top of
you
the
have
tourbillon.
exactly you have the indication at what mounts you are.
And that's how that mechanism is going to work.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Fantastic. So moving right along, now we go to the Tradition collection, specifically the 747. So this is a watch that implements two very fundamental ideas of watchmaking of centuries prior. One, of course, is the tourbillon, which this brand patented in 1801. The other element is going to be the fusée and chain,
Yes.
which is, in essence, a constant force device, which helps with the torque of the mainspring and helping free relation of that torque to the escapement. But could we explain how this works and also talking about this model specifically and why it's so special for the brand?
So first of all, in the Tradition line, it's an expression of all the mechanism visible from the front side. And the advantage of fusée chain, it's spectacular in terms of dimension, three-dimensional effects. So what's the mean of the fusée chain, which is actually a very old concept because Leonardo da Vinci described it, in the 15th century. So it's a very long process to reach here. And it's the principle of providing this constant torque via a chain that is connected from the fusée to the barrel. And it works actually like a bicycle gear change. So when you put energy on your bicycle, if you have a small pinion on the back, you need to put a lot of energy to advance at a certain speed. If you put your chain in the very high pinion, you need to put less energy to have a speed. So that works with the same principle. So when you have the barrel that is fully wound, so if I rewind the barrel, the chain coils around the fusée and reaches the top level of the pinion.
So it'll gradually stack and ascend in height.
Exactly. So it will provide the energy through the smaller part of the pinion. When the barrel gently empties, you will have the chain that will coil around the barrel, and by putting this energy, it will go down until the larger pinion. So by doing this, it is providing a very constant force to the gear train to make sure that we increase precision. And this combined with the tourbillon, which is also there to increase precision, we have the combination of two great inventions to ensure accuracy and timekeeping.
So what you're seeing with that fusée and chain is the fusée is working in tandem with the unwinding of the mainspring with that torque and is creating a perfect kind of exchange of opposite force to allow that constant type of flow of energy.
Yes, exactly. So whatever the energy you have in the barrel, the flow is constant. So the energy that goes to the gear train stays constant.
And then as that unwinds, then the chain is going to start to go around the barrel.
Yeah, exactly. So if I rewind it, we see that the chain is coming up to the higher level.
And we have a very large tourbillon cage as well on this.
It is because actually this is the key of the Tradition. Tradition is also built with a case with a very high glass. So we can see through the glass and we see this big tourbillon cage, which is nearly the half of the movement.
Yes.
When you see it's very nearby the center, that's why we have the off-centered dial, which is traditional also in the Tradition range. And it gives space to the fusée chain mechanisms and this very wide titanium cage.
It's a beautiful layout, absolutely stunning. Moving along to another pillar within just the elegant side of the collection of Breguet, we move to the Classique collection. Specifically, we're looking at more ultra-thin types of approaches to this type of watchmaking. Let's start with the 7337 and start there. And tell us a little bit more about this piece. This is special and how it's displayed of the different apertures and also the dial. Simply stunning.
Major difference with the Tradition because the case is very similar. We don't have this glass very high on the Classique. But of course, the main difference with Tradition is that the dial is closed. So we have a closed dial, gold dial, engine turned. Internally, very refined engine turning to keep, I would say, a very matte and aspect to avoid reflections. Because this was the aim of Abraham Louis Breguet. Because at that time, he was making engine turning to enhance readability of the functions. So that was the first point. And the second point, in the early 19th century, we see pocket watches with functions that are off-centered. And the aim of these was to focus on the different function, meaning that when you read the time, you don't have another function that is maybe pushing you to misread the time. So you have the time function, where that is off-centered, and the full calendar is on the upper part of the dial. So this timepiece is inspired by this pocket watch of early 19th century and expresses in the same way the off-centered hours, the date, the day, and the moon phase, meaning that we have the functions that are totally isolated from the reading of the time. Then it is assembled into an extra thin caliber. So what mean extra thin means robustness, and in a way looking for the best solution to be thin but robust with calibers. So they are very, with a complication like this, it stays a very thin watches. And we see also that we have an off-centered oscillating weight in these timepieces, also creating more space in terms of surface to assemble all the components on a single layer.
So you're creating a level plane for all the components, because typically when you add an oscillating weight, it adds a lot of thickness to the watch. You're able to offset that by having this orientation.
Exactly.
And the same is said with the gear train as well, correct?
It is true, on the same level.
Yes.
Yes.
So you're able to modify that to allow it to get thin.
Yes, exactly. But again, thinness means you have to stay robust anyway.
It's nothing if it doesn't truly
exactly.
work. Yes.
So you always have to find this compromise between what you want to achieve, like robustness, aesthetics, and of course functions you want to add to the watch.
Speaking of trying to figure things out and make it happen, this next piece here, open work, 5395. My first question when I look at this is how, because it's just, it's remarkable to look at it. So first, let's introduce this concept, and I think some of my obvious questions are, how are you able to pull this off from a manufacturing perspective? You're talking about a watch that contains a tourbillon, also has, it's automatic,
yes,
which
true.
You wouldn't know by looking at it immediately, but you get creative with this.
Yes.
And being able to have this open work display while keeping it so thin. So could you describe this watch a little bit more for us?
So the genius of this watch is being able to open a movement that is quite thin already by keeping it visible. So the oscillating weight is on the outer part, is made from platinum. And we have the bridges that are made from hardened gold. And this one is based on the extra thin tourbillon we have in the collection without the power reserve. So that's why you have these big openings here, because we have no indication of the power reserve. The challenge of these is the same as the 7337. You have to make it robust while keeping it very thin in terms of proportion. And you have, I don't know how many design iteration to make sure that you have a good balance of aesthetics, again, while maintaining these thinness. And we also had some, I would say, clever way to design this movement. We have 7 ball bearings that are maintaining the barrel, that are maintaining the barrel shaft, also the oscillating weight, and all these put together allows you to make something very thin but keep it robust with these technical functions that are, yes, if you look at them, you see them, but you have 7 ball bearings in there that are guaranteeing the resistance and the perfect timekeeping of the watch.
And how thin actually is it?
The caliber is 3 millimeter thin.
Remarkable. So in keeping in mind, you have a whole tourbillon cage in here.
Yes, in titanium.
Oscillating weight, and it's all being stacked within a caliber that thin.
Exactly. And then you need the barrel that gives you the energy to make it work.
That's right.
So this is also part of the, we see that we also have some openings on the barrels that shows the spring underneath.
So the other important distinction here is also when you're talking about the barrel, the mainspring is this is a 4 hertz movement.
True.
And an 80-hour power reserve.
Exactly.
So remarkable.
All fit in a very thin movement. And I would like to add some very tiny details, but that makes very sense on such timepieces. When we have the numbers that is connected with the number we engrave on the case back, generally we print it on the dial or we engrave it on the dial. In this case, we have no dial. I mean, there is a dial, but we cannot print a number on it. So we have a very tiny plate with Breguet and the number applied on the movement, meaning that for every movement there is a single plate assembled to that area to identify the unicity of the timepiece. And this you have on all the extra thin tourbillon on the Classique line.
Simply stunning. And one final watch. So if you're talking about epitomizing elegance from a woman's watch perspective, Queen of Naples, I think this is absolutely the pillar for Breguet in that regard. So could you describe first where the name come from, and then talk a little bit more about the piece?
Yeah, Queen of Naples became an iconic watch in the industry. It's dedicated to the ladies' audience, and it is a watch. It's a free interpretation in a way of the first wristwatch produced by Abraham-Louis Breguet for the Queen of Naples, Caroline Murat, the young sister of Napoleon. She was Queen of Naples at that time, and this is a free interpretation of that specific watch. And this was launched in 2002, so it's over 20 years now, and it's expressing one key element where we have the off-centered hour, located more to the 6 o'clock, and then we have room on the outer part of the dial to express something else. So sometimes we express moon with power reserve. In this case, we express 24 hours. So we have this watch that is moving as soon as we rotate the hand. By when we reach sunrise, so at 6 o'clock, the sun, which is represented by the balance, expresses the rise of the sun. And then when we reach midnight, the moon will come up. So it means that it's a 24-hour indication, which is quite playful because we have this expression of the starry sky. And this is also a way to enhance this approach of the Reine de Naples, where we have this oval shape and we have the hour and minute at the lower part, and keeping these, I would say, area of the canvas where you can express something else.
So you have the balance on this carriage that's rotating to,
Exactly.
to demonstrate AM, PM.
Exactly.
Indicating the sun. That's
Yes,
brilliant.
exactly. It's a very important collection for us. So you have a variety of material, variety of complication, variety of movements. We have also developed a flexible hands for it. And this is really the apex of the collection.
Nothing more could be said other than it gets to a point in watchmaking where you can't even describe it as watches anymore. It gets to a point of art. And that's, I think, what we're looking at here. Well, Claudio, thank you very much. I appreciate the
My
walkthrough.
pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.